One of the main complaints you hear nowadays from teachers is that our students can't even write sentences with basic structure. So how can we expect them to write sentences that are much more complex? Well, I have two different rules that I teach my kids of how to take their sentences from really simple to more interesting and more complex. So if you want to learn more about sentence structure and complexities, stick around. Hi, I'm Robin Mellum. I'm a children's book author with HarperCollins, the Disney Hyperion, and I'm also a middle school teacher. And I decided to change up my writer's workshop after I became published, and I realized that there were some skills that I was teaching in the program that I was using that weren't matching up with what I learned from the pros, the editors in New York. There were some things that were missing. There were also some components to like how authors really live their lives that weren't matching up with the workshop the way I had been doing it. So I totally revamped it. I came up with these 6 main skills that I think every student should have in order to be ready for real world writing or publishing or any type of job. And so in this series, I'm going over those 6 skills. And today we're going to be talking about number 3. Number 1 was voice. So you can go back and find that video. Voice is super important. It's going to give them confidence. It'll help them build that stamina once they have that confidence and a style. Next, we work on hooks. That was skill number 2. I have a video on that as well. That's going to get them starting whatever they're doing, whether it's an essay or if it's fiction, whatever it is. Their first couple lines will bring their reader in. It's going to reel them in. And then the third one is what we're talking about today, which is sentence complexity and structure. So it's kind of like, you know, once they have a style, once they reel in their reader with their hook, how do they keep them there? And the way that you keep someone in your writing is to make it interesting, is to make it readable, is to make it enjoyable, make it flow. And oftentimes we find with our young writers that their writing feels a little stilted, right? It's kind of simple. It's not really getting into that complex type of writing that we want them to do. And it's difficult. And so what I've been doing with them is coming up with these couple of rules that I give them while they write that helps. There's just these little tweaks that will help them vary their sentence length, and then also to use a mixture of simple, compound, and complex sentences. So there's like these little rules that I give them. They have to follow the rules, and it helps them to really break things up and make their writing really interesting. So what I have is I'm going to show you on my screen. There are some lessons that I go through with them, and I lead off with a paragraph by Gary Provost. If you haven't done that before with your students, it's mind-blowing. It will change their way of thinking about, like, why do we have to do sentence variety? Why do we have to have complex sentences? This is why, and I'll show you on my screen how I use those paragraphs to really, you know, hook them into this lesson, number 3, so they realize the importance of having sentences that are interesting, complex. You reel your reader in, and then you have to keep them there. And what I found was that when I started off with these rules, we kind of had to do these in the revision process because it doesn't come naturally, but you have to keep doing them over and over. And what you'll find eventually is they actually start doing this in their writing right away. That's what we want. We want this to come naturally, but you have to do it with practice. And by doing a writer's workshop that is student-led, that I talk about in my guidebook, and that really celebrates them, it's fun. And so go check that one out about my guidebook as well. All right, so I'm going to take you to my screen and I'll show you how I teach sentence complexity. All right, I wanted to show you the slides that I use to teach sentence structure, complexity, variety. I'm showing you first the wheel here that I share with my students, and these are the lessons that we go through during every workshop. And I always start with voice number 1 there, and then I go around the wheel, and then we do one lesson at a time. We go back around the wheel again, and we keep repeating these so that they have these lessons over and over and over throughout the year. until whatever that skill is, it comes natural to them. So that's what we're talking about today is number 3. And I always start with 2 paragraphs that are from Gary Provost. This sentence has 5 words. If you've never read this with your students, you are in for a treat. This is the coolest thing. Usually what I see is that the paragraphs are together, but what I did is I separated them out because it'll have more impact for your students. And then read these out loud to them and have them think about what they're hearing. The second one is basically like why we have variety in our sentences. And my kids, there were a couple of them we were finding like, oh, I get it. Now I understand. Let me show you how I separate this out into structure and variety. So the first one that I usually do is variety. We start with that, and I always show them like examples and definitions, and we go through like practicing things together where we talk about variety, like in Gary Provost's paragraph there. And I show them like bad examples, and then we talk about how to rewrite that in a better way. After that, we start matching up, and then these slides that I have them like use these arrows and they can match up which is which, and then click here and go to check their answer. And then they start going. So it's sort of that gradual release type of teaching where I show you examples, we do it together, then it's your turn with some scaffolds, and then you do it independently. So I get them going, give them a medium one, then they try and add on to that little paragraph with long and short sentences. And then they start to try and do it on their own with 3 sentences, 1 short, 1 medium, 1 long. And I give them 2 topics that they're practicing with. You could have them where if you wanted to, make some accommodations here where they might just do 1 topic, or they could choose one or the other. And then this is the fun thing. If you have some books in your classroom, everybody go grab the book, or it's the one that you're reading together. They flip through, find a short one, a medium one, a long one, and just type it in there, and then we share it out. After that, that's when I get into simple, compound, and complex. And again, we go through the definition, we look at examples. And if you're doing these for kids yourself, as I've done on the screen here, I only reveal little parts at a time. Otherwise, it's just too much for them to take in. Well, complex sentences, I break those down into different parts so they can kind of see what makes it complex. And then we look at those examples, simple, compound, complex. We do some matching exercises. Again, they can check their answer. Another time where they are guided with some help. And I put some hints in there as well to kind of make sure they aren't stuck. And then they go from there and they try and start to write these several sentences themselves. And then again, they go find a book. They find simple, compound, complex sentences. And then the part here that's key is why I chose it. And that's sort of like telling me, how do you know this is a simple sentence? How do you know this one's compound? I chose this as a compound because it has a conjunction and 2 independent clauses, however you want them to say that. But they have to kind of describe why it is that they chose those. So I would split these up into 2 different lessons and then keep spiraling back to it so that they are repeating these things over and over. Maybe you just put a short sentence on the board, see if they could add a medium and a long, or vice versa. Do a long one, see if they can add in. They love to do short sentences. And then also at any point, have them grab a book and start finding examples. That's the best way for them to try and really get this, stuck in memory of what they are. So this is how I introduce it. And then I do a lot more with those. So keep checking back. And in the next video, I'm going to be talking about skill number 4, which is, let me scroll back up here. The 4th one is figurative language, which I know you probably have a lot of information on, but I want to show you how I do it and how I walk them through that. So check back for that video. All right. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.